Hey YouTube fam, it's Daughter of the Most High. I came across a video in my feed a couple hours ago and I just finished watching it and I want to share it with you. And it's not the typical video that I share regarding like end times and current events and things like that. This video is about daycare and how it impacts kids. And you might say, why are you sharing about daycare and how it impacts kids? The reason why is because it's so incredibly important to know the information that this woman shares on this interview in this video. And I have always had a heart for parenting and a broken heart for the lack of parenting and lack of investment that so many parents have in their kids and in their well-being, especially in the early years. It just has broken my heart forever. So the video is called Daycare Impacts on a Child's Brain and Socialization Myths by Dr. Erica Commissar. And she wrote a book called Being There. I want to get her book from the library because I buy too many Christian books. And she's not a Christian. It doesn't seem like she's a Christian. She doesn't say anything about it, but she shares such important information. So her book is called Being There. And she is on the Real Alex Clark YouTube channel. And the video is an hour and 43 minutes long, but I'm going to tell you, it's so good. She has so much information that is so important for parents and parents to be and that sort of thing. And so I really encourage you to watch this. So what I want to share with you is I had my kids. You know, I was pregnant 27 years ago, and my situation was not good. I was a backslidden Christian and got involved with, you know, my kids' dad. And once I found out I was pregnant and was going to try to make it work with him, it didn't work, but tried to make it work. And I told him right off the bat, right out of the gate, I don't believe in daycare. And I won't go that route. And so he didn't say too much at the time. Now, when it was clear, we struggled. We did. We struggled because of my son's special needs and me being so attentive to our son and caught up in that, and so the neglect of the marriage, and then he resented me and our son and the whole deal. And then we did separate when the kids were really young, and then divorced when they were in third grade, or heading into third grade and sixth grade. It was the summer just before their third grade and sixth grade school years. And when we had separated and were trying to work it out, he had said, you know, you need to work. You need to work. And I said no. I mean, the kids were young, and you know, maybe our son was in kindergarten. I don't remember exactly when he said this, but our kids are 3 years apart. And so maybe, you know, our son was in kindergarten. I don't know, but I said no. You know, and I told you this. And were we broke? Yes. When people say that they struggled to make it, the struggle is real. I mean, we had our needs met, but there was hardly any extra money ever. So it was rough. But people say, oh, you're so lucky you got to stay home. No, that was not it at all. We sacrificed a lot. And so I feel very strongly about mom being home with the kids. Now, sometimes dad is home with the kids, and that's okay too. But as is addressed in this interview, Dr. Erica Commissar does talk about how women have a little bit more of a nurturing quality to them. Some women, not all women. And it really is best for mom to be home. But if dad can be home, if mom makes more money or whatever the situation, that it's okay. It's best that they're with a parent. Okay, so there's that. I knew in my heart that, I was a backslidden Christian when this happened, when I got pregnant with our son. And yet, even in my just natural way, and not meaning that it wasn't the light and love of God that makes such a difference in our hearts and in our character and our life, I knew even in my fallen self that kids need more than what they're getting. And so, absolutely, mom needs to be at home. And so that's why I put that out there right away with he's my covenant spouse, but I still call him my ex because I'm not a standard, don't want that relationship back, but I am in covenant with him, the one flesh covenant. So women who want to have it all, and I understand that, but women who want to have it all need to realize that they can have it all, but they can't have it all at the same time. They shouldn't have it all at the same time. And I have heard people say, yeah, I can do it all, and yeah, that whole thing. You know what? The fact is you are not doing it all well. You may be doing it all, and you might be running, and are you ever present with your spouse, with your kids? What is your presence like, your job performance at work? No one can go from morning till night for years and be throwing in a load of wash and, got something cooking on the stove, and then the kids want something. You're just not present. You're just not. So, especially if you're working full-time, maybe if you've got a part-time job that's 15 or 20 hours a week, that's different. But again, you shouldn't have even much of that in the first 3 years of your child's life. So, women can have it all. You just can't or shouldn't have it all at the same time. I realize this is a hot button issue, and you know what? I don't care. I don't care. It's an important issue. And if somebody gets mad, like they do, I'm sorry that you cannot see what a child needs and how precious the early years are. And this is a God-given gift to us. To be there for our kids, those are the most precious years ever. Those years with your kid are so important. They top anything you can do career-wise. I don't care what you do for a career. Nothing tops being home with your kids. It just doesn't. And so what happens, and Dr. Commissar addresses this very thoroughly. She's so articulate. She's so intelligent and educated. The interview is so good. So, and here I am. My kids are grown, but I still loved it. She discusses the impact and some of the myths about daycare. What happens to the child when you drop a baby off at daycare at 6 weeks, which turns my stomach. I'm sorry, but it does. How does any woman do this? And how is any man okay with this? So here you have this precious newborn baby at a daycare, noisy, kids laughing and having fun, kids crying, kids yelling. Kids always yell, it seems. And they're loud, and this baby just wants to be home with mama, just leaning against mama. So the daycare situation affects a child's ability to attach to their parent and to other people. That's why we have so many dysfunctional relationships, is because of people's ability or lack thereof to attach. Now, we know there's other situations in our history that have impacted that, and we're not going to go into that today. But there are circumstances, and our focus today is daycare, that affects a child's ability to be able to attach to their parent, to other people. Sorry, I got a little hair that's just flowing into my face. And it also creates other developmental issues depending on the child, depending on the home life. So many families are divorced and the kids go back and forth. There's so many problems. We know the breakdown of the family is the enemy's plan and agenda, and boy, has it been successful. So, there's ways to do this. There's ways I could segue in so many statements that I'm making, but let me just say, because I'm divorced, and my covenant spouse and I did separate. I moved out. I moved into this townhouse that I'm sitting in right now. I gave him the house because he's dangerous, and so we had to appease him in order to keep myself and the kids okay. And so it was my goal, even with my kids that age, 7 and 10, to make my kids a priority all around my work time. I did have to work. I had to pay the bills here. He paid minimal child support. That's a whole nother story. He paid nothing initially, and then he paid $100 a month for the remaining time until he took me to court and caused me a huge mess financially. The whole thing was a mess. So he really negatively impacted my finances. But so I had to work in every way. But all my work around, all my time around work, I spent with my kids. The morning, the night, and all weekend, every weekend. I did almost nothing socially back in the day. And I did share in a previous video that I did attend a Bible study as my kids got a little older, every other Friday night. I didn't even go every Friday night because I didn't want to take away from time for my kids. My kids and their development and well-being and just my heart and time for them was and is my priority. So, Dr. Commissar talks about how certain mental health issues are a direct result to children being raised in daycare. And what happens there, and she goes into it so much more so than I'm going to in the next minute, is that the child really, really struggles on various levels with things that occur in the daycare. So they will cry, they're scared, it triggers that, that fear, maybe even like a trauma response depending on the sensitivity of the child. And it triggers that, and they don't get any relief, or maybe the daycare worker holds them for a little while, puts them upstairs to cry it out, all those crazy things that people do that we just seem blinded to what a baby truly needs. So what happens is that the child, all of these are recorded in the subconscious of the child, and the child is also forming what we call core beliefs, meaning that I can cry, I can be terrified, and no one or maybe a stranger comes to hold me for a little while and then just puts me in a room because I don't settle down. There's noise everywhere. I have to wait to get every need met. And again, this is a brand new, precious baby. It's so unhealthy. And so I knew of the negative impact of daycare and the various ways that it impacts kids, plus the home life and the time around the work, and everything is a factor. But I didn't realize that it was actually causing some mental health issues, typically depression, anxiety, and ADHD. She says, Dr. Commissar says, that ADHD, which I thought was all the chemicals in our food and the poor quality of nutrition in our food, she says that it has to do with the trauma response of not being cared for as a vulnerable brand new baby. That the brain is not handling that response well, and so it's creating a stress response and higher levels of cortisol in the brain that is causing anxiety and depression in the child. And so there's various behaviors that happen as a result of it, the way it manifests within the child and then in the child's behavior. And also, of course, as I said in the beginning, a child's ability to attach. Now, attachment, if I can just go there really quickly, I wasn't even planning on chatting this long. But attachment can either be where somebody is very clingy, and you can probably even reflect on this in your personal relationships, whether it's a friend or somebody that a romantic interest. Where some people are very distant and tend to keep you at arm's length, and some people are like, I've heard people call them a stage 5 clinger or a cling monster. And what this is, now those names are funny, but that abandonment at their core is not funny at all. But sometimes these people will literally suffocate you with their neediness. So needy. And so that is a way that this manifests. So you can say, somebody can say, oh, my kid was in daycare, he or she's fine, but their relationships are so either highly dependent or very distant. And because most people aren't very intuitive or insightful, they completely miss, the actual dynamics of the relationship. And so somebody that is perceptive and sees that, can see how somebody relates, is actually dysfunctional and based in their needs, their unmet childhood needs. And so, yeah, it's evident. Dr. Komisar also, it just escaped me what I was going to say. I could feel it like leaving me. What was it? What was I going to say? Maybe it'll come back to me. But it was right along that same line. She said sometimes this, like mental health or lack of stability, or the abandonment issues, some of them shows up in childhood and some of it later in the teen years. And so people may think, oh, my child's fine, and they don't realize what's ahead in the teen years. Their child maybe goes to pieces or really starts to struggle. And what it is evidence from those unmet childhood needs. If a couple or, mom is willing to put that time into their child when they're little, when they're young, and meet those needs, you are giving them a foundation that they can do, I think, a really challenging life in a lot of ways, especially these days. You are giving them a platform to do life off of. If you rob them of that good foundation in the beginning, in those early developmental years, you're going to make life harder for your child. Maybe forever, or until they get counseling and sort this stuff out. And we know that counseling isn't perfect. We can, start to recognize things, name things, that sort of thing. And still be really broken in a lot of ways. So most people are broken in a lot of ways, or some really significant few ways that really impact. A lot of times it's their ability to develop relationships, healthy ones, fulfilling ones, not broken, crazy, dysfunctional relationships. There are a lot of relationships out there, but how many are actually healthy? So I wanted to share one more thing. So when I was working at my first job as a counselor, and I hated being away from my kids. I truly did. I thought I was going to have to be on anxiety medication, plus going through a divorce with a very unhealthy, soon-to-be ex. And I thought I was going to have to go on medication because I had such high anxiety. I never did, but yeah, the thought was there. And then my supervisor asked me to take this DBT class, which is, DBT are tools to help people that have issues, life challenges, addiction, that sort of thing. They're coping tools and ways to manage life so that they can stay in recovery, be healthier, handling their challenges in a healthy way rather than using, acting out, retreating. It's always one way or the other. It's always an acting out or an isolation. It's, using substances. It's always some kind of far-reaching thing whereas our health and well-being is in the center. So when somebody's behavior is either pretty far this way or pretty far that way, it's an indication of trouble in here and in here. So she asked me to do the DBT class and then come back and teach the counselors the tools. And that is something that I actually would love doing. That is so me. But I told her, I said, I can't take any more time away from my kids. I can't do that. And this was in a staff meeting in front of everybody. And I told her that I can't do it. And she just kind of did this, you know, how you drop your shoulders and just kind of go, really? Like me not wanting to take away time from my kids was a shoulder drop and head tilt. Come on. And my kids were young. And people may not think 3rd grade and 6th grade isn't young, and 4th grade and 7th grade isn't young. Well, their dad and I had just separated and divorced. We're living in this house. How many changes can a kid take? I'm somebody that always thinks about how this is for my kid. I'm grown. It may be difficult for me. I may be managing stress, but I have coping skills. I can process and I can use coping skills and I can talk to my friends and I can do this and that. Kids are young and they don't have coping skills. So they internalize things or they act out. It's always internalize and act out. And so I didn't want my kids to have any more time away from me than my work time. I gave them all the time around my work. So I just wanted to share that because even at that age, we have to be aware of what our kids are going through, whether or not it's a divorce situation. Maybe they just struggle in school, or maybe they struggle socially, or maybe something else. Be there for your kids. Your kids are better for it. So, and this is something that has weighed on my heart forever. 27 years ago when, you know, I was pregnant with my son, and even today. So look for the link in the description. This interview is so good. Please share it with others. Parents need to know and grow. And again, her book, Dr. Erica Komisar, Komisar, licensed social worker. Her book is called Being There. So look for the description. Thank you, fam.